because I couldn't manage and tolerate my own feelings. I just had so much in this body of mine that I didn't really know how to process. So,
Welcome to the very first ever Pivot Healthy Adult podcast. I'm today's host, Kayla Schmitz, Pivot's Admissions and Marketing Director. And today's guest is none other than Pivot's founder, Lori Jean Glass. Lori Jean is the author of Hashtag Healthy Adult and the founder and creator of Pivot. Pivot is a relationship coaching company that helps people learn how to think better, feel better, and live better. And here she is, Lori Jean Glass.
hey, Kayla.
Hey, Lori Jean, great to have you here today.
I know this is so fun.
Really exciting to get this going.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about all things pivot. And I feel like the best place to actually start is with a concept you introduced in your book called the crazy train.
Hmm.
And I'm going to be bold and say, without verifying with you first, that the crazy train is perhaps the vehicle that drove you to pivot, and maybe your experiences riding it fueled what you built. You said in your book, the crazy train is fueled by old feelings ignited by current relationship dynamics. So, before we go any further, I'd like you to talk to us about the crazy train, what it is, the different phases of it, and really paint us a picture of what it's like to ride the crazy train.
I first of all, thank you, and I love that we're having our very first podcast be just be on this, the crazy train, because you are 100% right. The crazy train, riding the crazy train and going through all the trauma and drama in my life is what led me to have this hunger in my belly to develop something that actually really worked. Not that other things don't. A lot a lot of other things work, but I do know that what we do and what we offer people really works. And I felt crazy and was called crazy because of behaviors that I was engaging in because I couldn't manage and tolerate my own feelings. I just had so much in this body of mine that I didn't really know how to process. So I would go and I would do things without really fully thinking about what I was doing, and then have so much shame when I would get on the other side of that. So when I started at a mental health facility where we worked with people that had anxiety and mood disorders and all other kinds of challenging, problematic diagnoses that people get when they've been doing a lot of crazy things, I thought, you know what? I want people to understand what they're doing and why they're doing it so it can help them eliminate a lot of that shame. And so at the time, I had a partner who is still a partner of mine in Pivot. His name is Will. And he helped me develop and get our very first logo before Pivot was Pivot. And it was called the Crazy Train. And I started going around to behavioral health conferences pitching this idea of what it's like when an anxious person and an avoidant person get into a relationship and the dynamics behind all of that. And that is really kind of what started me thinking about developing an entire library, an entire process of helping people have better relationships. And like our tagline says, to be able to think better, feel better, and live better. So the crazy train, yeah, that was the beginning, and it's still a concept that we use often.
So, it all
And
started with that crazy train. Yep.
yeah, it all, and I'm not going to get into probably a lot of my story in this interview because it's all in my book. I mean, it led me crazy train. When my crazy train crashed, that was when I thought that not being alive was my only solution. And I, hand on my heart to say that because I have met a lot of people, and there's probably a few walking around Target right now that don't want to die, but they don't know how to live. And it is such a painful place to be. And I love it when people can kind of make sense of who they are and what they do. A couple of things are coming to mind. I say it in my book, and a lot of people have said the quote that Oprah said about, it's not about what's wrong with the child, it's what happened to the child.
Mm.
Well, as an adult self, if I don't do my developmental parts work, I'm not going to know what happened to my inner child. I'm going to continue to do things that are going to drive me to crazy train. And you asked me about the stages. of the crazy train. And the most important thing is to just be able to acknowledge it first as a human being. Acknowledge that the behavior that you're doing, the actual behavior that you're doing, is not working for you. If calling somebody 38 times in a row, or avoiding somebody for 3 days and not having your voice, or using food or alcohol or shopping or whatever we do to be able to manage and tolerate those feelings isn't working, that's when we begin to acknowledge the crazy. It's acknowledging that behavior that we're making.
Right, right, right.
Mm,
And so the crazy train is really a metaphor for this experience someone is going through when
that's
they're
right.
struggling to manage and tolerate their feelings. So,
Yeah.
can you paint us a picture of the different phases and what's happening to the individual, all the way from the beginning of heading to the train station to when the train departs the
Yeah.
station?
So definitely, absolutely, and I do drop down into this pretty deeply in the book. Phase one is when we're heading to the train station. That's when we kind of know that we're feeling uncomfortable and there's something that's not right, and we got to do something. It's kind of like when somebody feels like they need to go and make that phone call that they really shouldn't make, but
Mhm.
they're starting to head towards the actual phone to make the call when they've already committed. Maybe it's somebody that has a restraining order against them, or maybe it's heading to the liquor store if you're a recovering alcoholic. Or maybe it's heading over to your ex's house to tell them how poorly they're parenting your children, and which is just going to create chaos in front of your own children. Whatever the case is, it's when you start to head to something because you feel so uncomfortable and you cannot manage and tolerate those feelings. So, phase one is heading towards that train station. Phase two is actually purchasing the ticket. That's when you're feeling flooded and there's no turning back. That's when you're already in the car driving. You're almost like, some people might even go as far as a little bit of disassociation. Some
Mhm.
people might just, be able to shift into that fight flight phase where their nervous system is so far taking them out that they can't have any rational thinking, and they're already going to where they are. This is what we call purchasing the ticket. This is when you've already made the decision. You're going to do the behavior. Phase one is thinking about it, and what's that going to be like, and what do I need to do. And phase two is actually purchasing the ticket, and you're in. Phase three is boarding the crazy train, and that's when you are in the behavior. So you're at your ex's house, you're already in the door, and you're already telling whatever, like blah 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 blah. Can I say bad words on this?
Absolutely. We're unfiltered here.
Okay. That's when all shit has, been cut loose and it is bad. And it's kind of funny to say it in a metaphor like this, but the truth is, it's not funny at all.
Right.
It's not funny at all, because then you are already doing to yourself and hurting yourself more than anybody else is hurting you. And that's when people get called crazy. And sounds like an Instagram post, oh, just manage and tolerate your feelings. Well, that's really difficult when you come from complex trauma. That's really difficult when you have a pain body wound getting activated. That's really, really, really hard to do. That's not easy for everyone. So, those are kind of the three phases when we talk about boarding the crazy train.
Yeah, and it seems like the crazy train, the process of it, and then even the ride itself can be pretty unique to the individual, and perhaps even situation by situation too within the same individual. And I know you kind of gave some examples, but what are some other examples of riding crazy train and the forms that it can take that either you've experienced or you've seen?
Well, I've seen hundreds of thousands, doing this work for 15 years. I've seen a lot, I mean, gosh, what comes to mind is when, someone makes a request in a relationship for some space and time, and the person won't honor that and
Mm.
give them some time to settle in. Maybe they come from a man and a woman, and he comes from an engulfed mom,
Mhm.
and they're having a fight, and he needs time to manage and tolerate his feelings. And the person that he's dating, won't will say they'll leave them alone and give them 24 hours just to kind of get stabilized after the fight. And the person that he's asked to not go over and engage with him is so anxious that they can't stop. So they think about, oh my gosh, what is he doing? And is he going to leave me? And how what's going to happen if we don't work out? That's her phase one. Phase two is she gets in the car and she's driving over. And phase three, she's knocking on the door when it's only been 2 hours and he's requested 24 hours, needing to have a conversation to make sure that the relationship is okay because she can't manage and tolerate her own feelings. And the flip side of that would be if they made a contract for 24 hours and 24 hours was up and they were supposed to come together and talk and say that he just started ghosting her and wouldn't even show up for the conversation because it's too much and he can't manage and tolerate his own feelings to go back in and have a healthy conversation. So there's so many examples that I could give.
Yeah, as you talk through it, I realize that I've taken, maybe a ride or 10 on the crazy train myself,
Mhm.
from invading other people's privacy to what we call social media creeping, which really is just another form of stalking. Let's call it what it is. You can't. It seems like hard to talk about the crazy train without mentioning this concept too of the gots to knows. I know you mentioned that a lot in the book with the crazy train too. Can you just briefly touch on what the gots to knows, what that means in pivot language?
Yeah, the gots to know is when you have to know something so badly that you go against your own values, even and break into somebody else's privacy and look and search, and do anything to get there. And in some cases, people will lie about it because they can't not know. They can't not know. They have to know. I was working with a mom recently that, she, oh, so sad. She lost one of her kids and she was so worried. Her child had an overdose and she was so worried about her other kids that she started, you know searching their computers, searching all of their personal stuff. And we're talking about a 16 and 17-year old, so just really breaking into their privacy. And when she got real honest with me, she felt so bad about it, and I could totally understand because she wanted to make sure they were safe,
Right.
because she didn't realize that her other child was so addicted to a drug that ended up killing him. So, and that's the gots to know. And she had read my book and she said, I don't want to have this feeling that I gots to know, but I don't know how to not know, because the not knowing, I feel like, I was responsible. And then she came in and did one of our retreats and was really able to understand that it was the disease,
Mm,
and it was some choices and it was a lot of other things that I won't unpack on here because it's her private world. But it was it was helpful for her to know what that felt like when she was feeling like she had to know, so that her healthy adult could help her settle down and go in and have the conversations with her children, get close, create some emotional intimacy that was healthy with her kids instead of going in and invading the privacy. And you know what? They got so much closer and they were able to experience, healing and going through their grief process in a way that could support and help each other as opposed to making each other feel uncomfortable.
right. I heard you mention the phrasing, the healthy adult, and I want to talk about that in a little bit. Before we go there, though, there's a couple other things about this crazy train that I want to get real clear about from you. And one of them is just the word itself, crazy train. I'm sure that word crazy is intentional. I also know that that's kind of, a hot button for some people to be associated with that word. So why crazy train? Why use that word?
Well, it's just what I came up with. And it was based on, if you read my book, based on my humility,
Mm,
because, I looked crazy when I'm calling somebody 28 times in a row because they're not answering. And I think, oh my God, there's something wrong. And I have a lot of trauma in my story, as I've talked about and written about. And again, I'm getting kind of tired of my own story. But to answer your question, the behaviors were really crazy because before I did my personal growth work, I could not manage and settle into, feeling sane and pausing. It's the pause. Just being able to pause and let time and the universe and whatever your spiritual belief is, individually for whoever's listening to this come in and have a role. I couldn't even allow room for that. It's really interesting. And so crazy train, it just seemed like a really good metaphor because the train automatically takes it off of you because human beings are not trains. The crazy train is a destination, is where we go. So it takes the crazy off of us, but it's connected to us because it makes us have to admit that what we're doing is does look crazy to people on the outside. And if that's too hard or too much for somebody to look at, then, I'm happy to have a conversation with them. It's certainly not meant to be degrading to anyone. It's really just meant to empower people to be able to get real about what they're doing, if that's what they need to do. The crazy train is not the pivot process. The crazy train is just one vehicle that we, no pun intended, because then we got the bus and we got the, no, I'm kidding, we do not have that, but the metaphor itself was really to help people that were taking other people hostage. That's where it started.
Right. So it's not necessarily a way to label, hey, you're crazy. It's looking at the behaviors that you're engaging in
That's
are
right.
crazy.
That's right. That's why the crazy train is not you. The crazy train is a metaphor for something that you're going to.
Right.
It's like a place where you're going.
Right. Right. Yep. And I feel like that's relatable to so many of us. Absolutely.
Yeah. I've
Yeah.
had I've had way more people relate to it than people that were like, "Oh gosh, are you telling me I'm crazy?" It's like, "No, I'm not telling you you're crazy. I'm asking you how you feel about the behaviors that you're doing."
Right.
And
Right.
I'm asking you to understand the people that have called you crazy. Why? I'm actually gifting you with being able to have an opportunity to see that you're not crazy.
Yes. Yes.
You're just taking this action for a reason.
Right, right. And I love the phases of it too, because you can so easily picture times in your life. And then too, even just the awareness of the phases to be able to pause, like you're talking about too, thinking about like, oh, I'm getting that urge to maybe go to the station, see what's going to happen, what's going to be there, where's the train going today. That's a real great opportunity to pause and consider what's going on that's making me think about heading to the station. Even
That's right.
to, hey, buying the ticket, that's a pretty hard thing to reverse. However, I have to imagine that there maybe are things that you can do to even stop yourself from buying the ticket to getting onto the train too.
Yeah. I was working with an executive down, we're in Northern California, our retreat center, even though we talk to people, we have coaches all over the country. I was talking to a client of mine that works down in Silicon Valley, and he's a top executive at this company. And I've worked with him for a while now. Great guy, did a lot of work, had a lot of developmental trauma growing up, and just really wanted to understand why he did what he did in relationships. Couple weeks ago, I get this phone call from him. I pick it up and he's like, LJ, I purchased the ticket. Fuck. Oh, sorry. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? He was heading into a boardroom and he was just absolutely out of his mind. He was like on the verge of ready to blow it up. I'm like, breathe, turn around. This is your adolescent self. Let's back up. And I got that guy, slowly helped him get it down. He goes, okay, the wheels have stopped turning. It's like this whole metaphor that we had used a year ago was now finally coming into play for him. And he was able to do a healthy do as opposed to an old habitual do and go in there and just blow shit up because he was so upset about someone that had made a huge mistake, but did not need to get his anger thrown at him like that. And so it was kind of cool because that metaphor related to him. It's like, slow it down, get off, just do not board it.
Right.
Do not board it. So he went back to his office, sent his team a text message and said, hey, I'm going to be 10 minutes late. Something important's come up. And we were able to settle him down, get him into alignment. And he was able to see that, this was his adolescent self that was just not comfortable managing and tolerating his feelings. So I know that's a real time example that, and
Yes.
and the only reason why it worked is because he knew where he was at in this process. It was about ready to blow shit up.
Right, right. And that's brilliant because it shows that even you got to the point of purchasing the ticket and he was able to put the ticket in the trash and not board that train.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah, I love that. And you mentioned that this particular individual had a lot of significant developmental trauma. And you talk about that in the book too when you're referencing Crazy Train, especially too alongside this idea of the pain body wound and how that interacts with a crazy train. Can you explain the concept of the pain body wound to us and the relationship that it has with Crazy Train and how all this developmental aspects of us come into play?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it. It'd be great to do a podcast just on pain body because that's a really big topic.
Right.
And I don't want the listeners or viewers to not quite get it. So I'll simplify it here and we'll bookmark that. So uh, pain body is a concept that Eckhart Tolle came up with that I just love. It really helped me dissipate so much shame that I carried
Mm.
because I couldn't understand the relationship I was having with this container of pain that I lived with. I have a lot of guilt around my mom's suicide that happened when I was an adolescent that I go into the story in the book, which is important, and felt so guilty for a long time. And it really created a lifetime of codependency and need to save
Mhm.
others in me.
Mhm.
And this pain body wound would get activated if somebody didn't need me or somebody would leave me.
Mm.
That feeling of being abandoned would get activated. And the wound itself, some people call it original wound, primal wound, pain body wound, we can call it whatever we want to, but it's that accumulation of the things that really activate you when you need all hands on deck,
Mm.
right? Like I can get activated if somebody, is not very nice to me, but I can just move through it quickly. It's like my healthy adult just, oh, okay, they must be having a bad day, but if somebody does something big, like won't won't share with me why they're leaving or what's happening, if it's a big one, then that pain body wound is something that if I don't know how to be in relationship with it and breathe through it and understand it, then I will head toward the train station. That's what I used to do. That's exactly what I used to do. Get activated on something really big and head towards that train station to try to manage and tolerate my feelings with things that weren't good for me. Jump right into a new relationship because I couldn't handle being alone because of my abandonment wound.
Right.
And
Right.
different people have different wounds. So,
So
yes,
basically, these maybe different experiences that we've had throughout the developmental stages of our life, some of them bigger than others, can activate and even push us towards Crazy Train more than others.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Absolutely. That makes sense. Yeah.
Mhm. It's really, we're using a cute little metaphor here, but it's really self-destructive behavior. But if you're going to engage in self-destructive behavior, is there a mechanism? Is there a process or something that you can start having a different established message inside of your head? Like that guy said, "Oh, I'm boarding crazy train." He didn't go, "Oh, I'm going to self-destruct my team." Like he was just in it already. But when he thought about that metaphor, he saw himself doing it and he was able to pivot and get out of there.
Right. Right.
Hmm.
Yeah. And, you know, um,
So much more. Pivot is so much more than just the crazy train.
right.
You
Right.
know, so much more. I know that's what we're focusing on in this initial podcast because the crazy train is what birthed pivot.
Right. Right.
No
Right.
doubt.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think the Crazy Train starting there also kind of leads into the bigger conversation of what is pivot and what it's able to offer people. Because I've heard you say this idea of managing tolerating your feelings multiple times. You can't talk about Crazy Train without talking about that skill too. And
Mhm.
The ability to manage and tolerate your feelings is easily the biggest benefit I personally received from Pivot. I used to, prior to Pivot, trust every thought I had, every feeling I had that followed those thoughts. And I used to take action on them too. So a
Mhm.
feeling would hit me so strongly and make me so uncomfortable that I had to take immediate action to make it go away. And if you had told me a few years ago that I could have a thought and a feeling and then just be okay sitting with it, experiencing it, and letting it pass, I wouldn't, it's not that I wouldn't have believed you, but I wouldn't have even understood what you meant by that because it would
Yeah,
have been too foreign to even make sense to me.
yeah.
And so for the individual who's listening to this and hearing like, yep, I get the concept of the crazy train. However, I don't think it's even doable what you're alluding to, this idea of managing and tolerating your feelings. So what does managing and tolerating your feelings really mean? What does it look like? How does one do that? And where does one even begin with it?
Well, it's a great question and it's a loaded question. I can't answer that question because it's going to be different for each person.
Sure.
So where they begin to do it is going to be different depending on what it is that they need to manage and tolerate. And it also depends on their own storyline and where they come from. At Pivot, what we do is we first, take a deep look at their developmental parts to have an understanding of who they are and why they do what they do. So for me, managing and tolerating my feelings, I had so much anxious energy in my child and adolescent that for me, it is doing just like what you said, is pausing, it's sitting down, it's breathing. For some people, it's about get up and take a little of my energy, you know,
Mhm. Right.
and go and get in there and tell somebody how you're actually really feeling. Beginning to manage and tolerating those feelings, I think it's a different process for everyone, and doing it, there's many ways to do it, and people want to find what works for them. I mean, some people, I don't know how deep you want to go on this first podcast, and I certainly don't want to sound, well, do I say this? Do I not say this? Okay, I'll say it. So
There.
some people will manage and tolerate their feelings with something that actually does not help them,
Mm,
but they're thinking that it's helping them. Like I think medications are great. I think if you get on too much medication or the wrong medication, that it can actually keep you from even processing feelings, and then it comes out sideways later. That's why I think I'm a big believer in the right psychiatrist that will really take some time and do a thorough evaluation to make sure that somebody is getting on really what it is they need and also has a plan around it. So it's not a lifetime thing that is supposed to keep them with their feelings stuffed down, because we know that we stuff them down too much, it comes out sideways. I managed my feelings exercising for years.
mm,
I mean, when I was younger, and I love exercise, there's nothing wrong with it. It's really important and it's key for your life. But if every time I was having a feeling, I was running to the gym or going out and doing a run, that was not helping me in the long run. It was helping me in the moment, but that's all I would do. So I would go and I would run until I got myself so incredibly exhausted that I would just drop. And then I would get up the next day and the relational pattern was still there waiting for me.
right.
So it really didn't shift how I was managing and tolerating my feelings. It was a good repair in the moment, but I overused the repair.
Right. Interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so I can really
And
connect.
again, I just want to make sure that's clear. Like, I'm not saying don't exercise, and
Right.
I'm not saying don't exercise every day, but I'm simply saying that if you just turn off your emotions and just say, nope, not going there, not going to deal with them, they will deal with you later. And sometimes they deal with you 20 years later physically,
Right.
when you have some physical problems medically that are coming up because of all of this unprocessed emotion. That's why I love Louise Hayes and her work.
Tell us about Louise Hayes. What's the connection there?
Well, she has a book that talks about the connection between physical complications and emotions.
Beautiful.
So if you're feeling these ways, these are some of the physical complications that you can have as a result of it.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, Healing Your Heart, I think is the name of her book. She's no longer with us, but I
Mm.
loved her work. And early on, when I started looking at creating this process, I read her book and was like, wow, this is a great way. This is a great addition. This is a great addition to remember this and think about this because it does come up and affect us later.
So I can really easily see how Crazy Train and the phases of it connect directly to Think Feel Do, which is in many ways the heart of Pivot. It's the tagline. I always describe it to people. It reads like a cheesy bumper sticker, think better, feel better, live better. But that is at the heart what Pivot is doing. We're helping people learn how to have better thoughts and better feelings and a better life because of that.
Hmm.
And so I think there could be some confusion at times when connecting think, feel, and do to this idea of a relationship coaching company because we hear the word relationship and we typically associate it to romance.
Hmm.
I've learned though, relationships extend way beyond romantic ones. So tell us a little bit about how Crazy Train and this story turned into Pivot and this concept of think, feel, do, which blossomed into helping others with the various relationships that we have in our lives.
Absolutely. So the Think, Feel, and Do came to me pretty early on when I started looking at trying to develop something. And where I realized that, you know, when people are deregulated, they have thoughts often that come on board. And then they have actions that they take. And their entry points of those varying things that go with shifting or pivoting are different for everyone depending on how they're attaching. So when I look at anxious people feeling, the feel part is, are you emotionally intelligent
Mm.
or are you acting compulsively or stuffing your emotions or not dealing with your emotions? The thinking part of it was, are you having rational thoughts or are you having rumination and obsession and irrational thoughts? And the do is, are you taking a healthy action or are you taking a habitual action, which is something that you're used to doing, which is often will lead you to crazy train. So that think, feel, and do came from, I was doing equine group at Medicine Horse Ranch. Um, Alyssa Aubrey owns that, and they were doing equine for us when I was at Five Sisters Ranch, and they do an incredible job. And in fact, one of their uh, uh, one of the people that works out there is now pivot, a very beloved pivot coach too, Gabby.
Yeah.
And and I heard Alyssa talk about congruency. She was talking about congruency because when you work with horses, there's an energy, there's an unspoken energy, right? Because not every horse is Mr. Ed. People probably don't remember Mr. Ed. I'm totally dating myself. That was a talking horse. Anyway, so she was talking about this congruency, right? And I thought to myself, gosh, how do we get congruent as a human being and stay there? What does that mean to be in complete alignment? And then I went to bed that night and I woke up the next morning. I had this thing in my head that kept saying relational alignment, relational alignment. And that's kind of where that came from. And I thought, well, if we're in relational alignment, we have to think with good rational thoughts. We have to have a higher level of emotional intelligence and we have to be taking healthy actions. Otherwise, we're falling over. We're boarding crazy train. We're emotionally bombing. We're hiding. We're doing secretive behavior. All these other things that are happening by not being in alignment. And so that's kind of where that concept came from. And we developed a whole couple of modules around that to help people understand how they're attaching to other people in real time so that they can get back to their own alignment, whatever that is. And that's not about being perfect. I mean, I'm highly dyslexic. I have to remind myself that I'm smart all the time, but I know the difference. I know the difference between having good rational thoughts and irrational thoughts. I can tell that difference. I can tell that difference when I'm feeling, okay, I got this. This is really uncomfortable. I'm going to show up at this party anyway. I know that XYZ is going to be there, but I'm actually okay. I can show up and be in my healthy adult versus, oh my God, what am I going to do? How am I going to go to this party? What am I going to say? Maybe I just won't go, you know? And then the habitual will do for me would be either to leave or to go in and stir some shit up. The healthy adult version of me will go in and have my internal boundaries and be able to get into alignment and be cordial and kind because I do wish to be the change I wish to see in the world. And if I'm going to be that, I got to do that. So think, feel, do. Yes, it's an easy concept. Yes, think better, feel better, live better is a bumper sticker. But the truth is those simple concepts, when they are met through a process that's personalized for you, have huge impact in real time for so many of our clients. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you referenced this healthy adult. I felt, first of all, I feel like when you were describing being outside of that space, as so many of us, the holiday season came to mind, and being around our families and inundated in those experiences.
Mm-hmm.
It's so relatable. And
Mm-hmm.
so, you've mentioned the healthy adult a couple times. Healthy adult is, in our podcast name. Talk to me about the healthy adult, what it means to be in that space, and what's the process into getting there.
It's a great question. So, the healthy adult is a concept that we created to have a fourth gear when we talk about developmental parts. So, many people have heard the concept of inner child. John Bradshaw really drove that home for us. I love his books, and he did a great job introducing that concept. At least he introduced it to me. There's probably people before him, but he was the one that got to me. And I read all of his books, and they really had a profound effect on helping me care for what I went through as a child and realize that that part of me is very much alive today. Even though I'm a grown woman, I can still feel sometimes when that inner child gets activated, when I get into fear that someone's going to leave me or someone's not going to be okay. I think losing my father when I was so young, not old enough to fully understand, but old enough to feel the impact and imprint that unmet longing I had about losing him, was really the platform that got me wanting and longing relationships so desperately, right? So that inner child is the first developmental stage that we work with. Then we go to the adolescent. And oftentimes, depending on one storyline, the adolescent years are supposed to be when we individuate from our family system. This is when we're supposed to go out into the world and make mistakes and then come home and have consequences for our mistakes and kind of get our own personality. That's why teenagers will start like wearing, I want to wear what I want to wear. I want to do what I want to do. I want to be who I want to be. And really what they're doing is they're just trying to find a way to be who they are in the world. And they're prepping. They're getting prepped to go out in the world and be adults. And many parents will fight that time or try to contain them. And we do need to contain and have boundaries and all that, but they need to be effective, right? So that adolescent stage, if we're adults and we haven't dealt with and looked at and gotten curious about our own adolescent lifespan, oftentimes we don't understand why we do some of the things we do as an adult. So that's that second stage. The third stage is the adult. And this is hard for me to say, but I'll just say it. There are many adults, including myself, that have had maybe 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 years of not being our best self.
Sure.
And, but I've always known I have another gear. And I've always known that a lot of the things that I've done to hurt people, they're not intentional. They're not intentional. Maybe a few of them, but not something that's so serious. Like you hurt me, I'll hurt you, back when I was younger, probably for sure. But I do know this, that as an adult and doing all my work, I still can have days where I've got to have that part of me in check because, sometimes I have to pull back when I realize I'm trying to control things so that things are okay. So I know we're safe. And sometimes that can overstep a boundary for other people that don't want someone to come in and manage them like that, right? You
Right.
follow me?
Oh, yeah.
So that adult stage can have complexities in it too. So the healthy adult was created as that fourth stage to kind of reparent all of our parts, including our adult. Because when I first started this, I'm like, but who's going to take care of my adult? Because my adult, she can be very, very smart. Many people have adults that can do some stuff in their life span, right?
Right.
What about when I want to help that part of me? And so that's where we created. There's other people that do similar work that call it something different, but I love the metaphor healthy adult because it's an opportunity for me to choose. It's an
Right.
opportunity for me to choose the healthy do versus habitual do.
That's right.
It's an opportunity for me to recognize behavior. And I'm saying me, what I really mean is our clients. We can help our client and me too, but
Right.
we really can help our clients with that piece. And I love that. I love that the people have really, really appreciated and leaned into this process because that piece of it is big for a lot of people because their adult self is still trying to do some stuff with those younger parts and they don't understand why it's not working because they haven't really developed the healthy adult inside of them. And that's why we kind of joke, but we're not really joking when we talk about if we can be in our healthy adult 70% of the day and have that other 30% know that they're being reparented
Hmm.
and can send signals to us so that we take a healthy do, not habitual do, it's a really good day.
Right. Your day's going to look a lot different. Hmm.
That's right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. Yeah, so all of this is featured and really kind of the backbone into what we call the pivot process, which is our curriculum based work that we help others through. It's an individualized process while there is some, standing structure in it too. What are some of
Mhm.
the different ways that we help people be able to one access that healthy adult, know that healthy adult, and really hopefully live in that 70% of the day space more?
Well, that's when they call you.
Yeah.
I really don't want this podcast to be an infomercial, so call Kayla.
Sure.
Um, what is important to note is that I'm super excited. I'm watching the time. I know we don't have a lot of time, but I'm just really excited about. First of all, thank you, Kayla. This was your idea to create this podcast, and you have done a phenomenal job with our company, and we're so grateful to have you with
Thank
us.
you.
I just want to acknowledge you and your work and what brought you to Pivot and your background. And, um, you know, we're going to be doing some interviews with different people, some of them pivot coaches, a lot of them pivot clients, some of them people I know in the industry that are doing amazing things to help healing other people. So I'm just so excited to get this going. So thank you for that. And if our listeners are curious about what we do, I really invite you to just go to the website and seriously give Kayla a call. Kayla hosts a Zoom once a month for people that are just curious about what we do. And we have a healthier hour if you're an alumni and you want to come back and join us and see what we're up to. There's all kinds of things that we can do. It would take me too long to explain it all. And again, I don't want to sound like an infomercial, but there's a lot of different ways that we can help people, and it's not a cookie cutter process that we have. We really can customize and individualize and work with a whole set of families. A family of 5 comes in, they have 5 coaches with them. Every single point in Pivot is individualized. So call us.
Yep. Yeah. And thank you, Lori Jean. And, to your point too, this is so customized for people who are curious. Great starting points are definitely reaching out to me, reading the website, checking out the book. If you're not a reader, you can listen to it on Audible. The blogs on our website are really informative and helpful. And then too, just knowing that we do have a lot of options to be able to meet where you're at in life. So if you don't have the ability to get away and go somewhere and do some work, we can meet you in your living room on your screen, or we can literally meet you in your living room and come to your house. So there's so many different ways that we're really able to help
Yeah.
people really get to know and access that healthy adult and build the muscle for that to be the person who's showing up in forefront. And I love to, I'll kind of leave it with this is I remember after I went to the glass house being told to give myself a good like 5 to 9 months for this to really sink in and let it become kind of a new way of being. And man, you guys nailed that time frame when I was told, because I remember I hit that 5 month mark and realizing, hey, like it's not so hard to choose the healthier way now. I don't have to reach, I don't have to put so much into showing up as a healthier version of myself. And truly, every month since then has just gotten easier and easier and easier. And these old patterns I had, these default ways of showing up, my habitual dues, like you said,
Mhm.
are really, they look a lot different now than they did before. And so I get it. If you're listening to this and you think that this sounds great and I just don't know that it's possible for me, trust me, I think so many of us have been in your shoes, been in that place, had those thoughts, and have found that this can really help change. And I'm excited for the different ways we're going to get to introduce that to our listeners moving forward, talking about our different modules, concepts, and some of the different things we do by having the different coaches on and sharing different experiences.
Awesome. Yay.
Yeah, so thank you so much for joining today, Lori Jean. What a great way to kick off Pivot's first ever Healthy Adult podcast. Again, I'm Kayla Schmitz. I'm Pivot's admissions and marketing director. Feel free to reach out. You'll find my number on the website, and we look forward to hearing from you.